Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Machine is the Message. I'm Patrick Keenan, one of your hosts, and I have here Alan Smith as well,
That's,
another host.
that's correct. I'm another host of this show, and usually we're super caffeinated and fired up about talking about this stuff. And Pat, I got to tell you, my coffee consumption was just like creeping. You know, when you start with like just creep in until you're going well into the afternoon, and you're just like, I'm just gonna get one more coffee, and then that becomes the new norm. And so I'm like, after my caffeine ramp has taken maybe 3 months to get up there, I have to just drop it. So now I'm back at zero, and
Nice.
I'm okay. I'll make it, but no caffeine.
I see. So you're mid fasting, mid coffee fasting.
I'm at the early stages of the withdrawal symptoms period. So 3 days theoretically I should be fine, but this is day
I'm
2.
at peak coffee consumption where I can down like 8 cups in a day and still go to sleep. And it's a problem. It's a problem. So
Yeah,
I with the fast.
but maybe you got to join me on this one, fella.
Yeah, it might be time. Well, speaking of coffee habits, tell us about this.
Okay, so I thought this was hilarious. I had never thought about this before. That look, coffee is kind of like palm oil and like all these other crops, like monocrops that we grow that are kind of bad for, you know, the earth in many ways. And hey, guess what? A lot of people drink coffee. And hey, guess what? Like you were talking about a few episodes ago, we're essentially shipping around all this organic matter to pull out like a tiny amount of like oils. Like the weight of the coffee beans is essentially the same before and after the coffee is made. It's just water with oils in it, like a small amount of oils. So the idea that these guys had was, well, how do we do something about that? And they likened it to, crops like beef and the whole beyond meat culture. So what if there was kind of like a beyond coffee where they took a bunch of ingredients that are not coffee and combined them in such a way that it was like coffee? And I was like, that's nuts. There's something so weird about this. And to me, from my initial understanding of how bad coffee is for the planet, kind of unnecessary. But the fact that they're going for it, I was like, this is cool. I think it's really of the time that we're just trying to say, okay, well, let's just make a synthetic version of this. Now, it is not
So
synthetic. It's mostly organic materials. Like there's, what is it? Like pea protein, date seeds, lemon, guava, sunflower seeds, and then caffeine that comes from green tea. Although I'm not sure green tea is that much better for in large volumes and monocrops, but
I mean, it's a plant, so you can certainly do worse things to the environment than grow a plant. But the shipping costs and all this stuff, and replacing food crops. But for listeners, this is Atmo is scaling up beanless coffee. It's an article, and this matches with our theme of talking about coffee before we get into AI. Very exciting future where the cost of coffee perhaps plummets to zero, or perhaps in future you will get paid to drink this.
it's
Imagine that.
it's going to drink the coffee for you, man. That's AI style.
Yeah, we're thinking only about exponential growth here, so imagine that. All right, going deeper, let's talk about technology for humanity's future. This is Con, I believe, which is Con.
iconbuild.com. So these guys, they've been in the news a little bit doing this. Maybe you've heard of the concrete 3D printed house. Is that familiar to you?
Yes, totally.
So
In
that's
fact, I
these,
will
these
say that was mentioned by the housing minister as like a new technology that Canada was kind of going to invest in. It was like a video of that concrete making 3D printing.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember they shared that in it was on the newscast or whatever, and it was cutting between those clips, or he was showing the clips. I think there's a couple companies doing this 3D printed house game. Um, they're these guys. I love their whole website and stuff is baller laced, and they're doing a great job with it. The houses look great. Um, I have questions. I don't know enough about this technology. I don't assume it would really work here in Canada, as well as most of these warm environments where they're putting it. Um, there's some interesting stuff here. There should be like a few links to. They have like an AI architect called Vitruvius that will help you design a home. They have basically like a catalog of existing designs. Um, they've got a whole bunch of different stuff going on. They've done a bunch of contracts already, more like proof of concepts, I would say. I don't know if this stuff, like, so concrete is a big problem, right? It is technically not a renewable resource. Um, and so there's a lot of questions about concrete building in the future. They apparently have also developed some kind of like more sustainable concrete. Um, to me, that's also interesting just on its own. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, check out these houses. How cool is that, right? Like that's
Oh,
rad.
yeah.
And that is a house. What I love about this is often the question is like, why now, right? Like, why this? Why now?
Mm-hmm.
Or why would you use this technology over another? That would not be feasible with would just not be feasible with traditional building materials. Like you cannot create those type of curves with traditional building materials cost efficiently. It would be a disaster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's interesting because like there's a couple of things I think about here. One is Alan de Botton, who's like a kind of modern philosopher, school of life guy. One of the things he talks about is like we have this illusion of progress, but in fact we have progress in a very small field where it's only we're only seeing smartphones and internet technology and screens coming down, but we all live in these Victorian houses that were built centuries ago, and we haven't updated our kind of building codes, and we don't think about that when we think about like this kind of exponential progress we're going through. However, um, stick it to you, Alan de Botton. Like that's what these guys are doing is basically like bringing the future to building. And I will also channel two other people. One would be Mark Andreessen, and I
Mm-hmm.
think Peter Thiel. They're kind of like of the same ilk, which is like libertarian Silicon Valley technology optimists, and uh, and they talk about like any industry that is regulated, innovation plummets. And I mean that's just
Right.
true. Like regulation's function is to make things standard, repeatable, and long lasting. And building is definitely a highly regulated industry. So I think in many ways, like the way to innovate in building is to take it out of that regulatory framework. One way you can do that is by going to like unorganized township with no zoning laws. Another is perhaps to go to Austin, which is where these guys are. And
Where the regulations are loose and the guns are slinging.
yeah, but for real, like I think it's so ironic to me that the liberals in Canada use this as a poster child when it's actually from Austin, and like all of the regulations that we have here in Canada are actually preventing this kind of innovation from happening. So we'll see how this works, but yeah, I think it's notable about where these things come from. Like you say, climate is a huge piece of building. At Sidewalk, we actually like probably the most interesting business model that came out of it was tall timber prefab, where you would take go to a forest, renewable forest. You would work with carpenters, unions, and manufacturers. You basically have an old style mill location base, and then you would ship all the pieces in and just snap them together in the air, and you can build like 35 stories into the air. So the possibilities are there, but again, I think there's regulation on the one side. It just took so much like fireproofing and like what's the wind thing, and just like so much in dealing with new materials. So that's one piece, and the other one is the financing, because the other part of like the regulation is around financing of real estate. So banks, give you a mortgage for a home that exists. If you're saying, I got this 3D printer, they're like, I don't know what to do with you. I
Yeah,
can't,
right.
I can't give you financing on the land that you might have like a concrete home on that might fall down. So yeah, our housing is partly stuck because of how slow the institutions and the processes around it are. But I just love this vision, and I love how they've actually like kind of productized these homes in a way that you feel like you could just take them off the shelf and plunk them down. I think that's what's got to happen, because it happens in record time before. So this is great. Great.
I've been learning a lot more about this industry, not the 3D printing industry, but the development industry, and how this stuff goes, where the money comes from, what the different types of developers are. And while house plan businesses are not new, there's this is one of those like wicked problems, right? And hey, look, designed by Bjarke Ingels Group.
Yeah.
One of the, I think, one of our most interesting living architects as of today, and also a younger architect, which you don't see often. Can you look up the big architect building here in Toronto? It's on King West.
Yeah.
That's worth talking about. So to me, that the King Toronto Residences, is it called? Big Leap. Oh yeah, look at this. This is wild. What a vision. So come on, that is so great, and it is well in progress of being made at the moment. The developer for this, you gotta give them credit. So the owner took 10, maybe 12 years to buy out almost an entire city block very quietly, to be able to make this happen, to retain the front facade of the buildings, and then build this, like, I don't know, like mountain range of cubes on top of it, which is just so rad. Like, to me, this is like one of those visionary things where you just want to freaking high five somebody, right? Like, way to go. Like, I'm so proud of you for making this happen.
Yeah, I think I don't know the full story behind it, but I know that like one of the things that they were looking at is how do you make like a highly dense community feel still walkable, and that you have kind of like neighborhoods, even though like it's a sprawling building. Like we all know these vertical high rises where you see people in the elevator and then you just go where you need to go. You get in your car in the parking lot. And I think what's really neat about this is you could imagine kind of like some public realm pieces to this, and you can see visibility. Like that's the coolest thing for me about San Francisco, is that you can look at hills, kind of like see across the way. It makes things feel much smaller. And so like this notion of like the new building methods can actually lean into like things we've learned about community and urban placemaking. So exciting. And just notably, it's like, why aren't there 100 of these things? Like, what is it about Big and this developer that let this happen? And we should be being like, let's make that happen way more. And I'd love to get somebody on the pod to sort of talk about what they think. Why did this happen?
And shout out to Habitat 67, right? Which was an inspiration for this. 76, 67? I can't remember which one it is. Which was this, 67. There you go. So this was this build in Montreal that was kind of like an architectural icon. And it was it's like cubes all stacked on top of each other. I don't know, destination.
Yeah, I think so. One of the notable things about this is it happened during the 67 World's Fair Expo, Canadian Expo. That was the time of innovation in Canadian design technology. Trudeau, the original, was in power. And I think that there was just a notion of optimism about like what could we build, and like stuff like this, the whole like subway system in Montreal, and just like the amount of countries that came to display at that expo. It was a time, and it was referenced actually in the sidewalk work. Like perhaps we can create some sort of innovation center for this stuff again. And since then we've just been dropping the ball. So I just love the source of this vision. And yeah, hopefully we can just have why we don't have more of that in Toronto and Canada. Well, now we do on King Street.
It's coming. Some of it's coming anyway. And construction's well underway on that building. I walked by it the other day. Actually, that entire area of Toronto, like the Well, is not completely complete, but a lot of it's accessible. They're still adding in a giant food court down there, but the walkability of Wellington and that entire area is fantastic. It feels like World City style stuff when you're there.
Cool. Yeah, that's really exciting. Yeah, hopefully we'll see more of that. All right. I guess one more link I will say is like, no, I won't say it. I'll just note it is like, I think of the downtown wards, most of them have declined in population since like 20 years ago. And like the only one that's increased is this area. I think this is like the Spadina, Fort York area, maybe.
That's
But
right.
anyway, where all those towers went up, that's the only one that's increased. And we just need to see more of this for it to be super vibrant. All right. When was the last time we built a new city? So this is on the same topic. So I think maybe we mentioned this before, but there's like a group of investors, like a lot of tech folks, who have bought off land, I think in the east area, east of Silicon Valley, and they're going to build a new city. And this is just an article kind of like looking at, well, why are they doing that? What's the case for it?
This is awesome. I'm sorry. How cool is this? It's just like, screw off San Francisco, screw off New York, screw off Austin. We're just going to go do this on our own. Okay. Sorry. I need to know more. Tell me more. This is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's literally what they're looking at is like you get so fed up with San Francisco, like with tents and car theft and like skyrocketing prices, and you're putting your office there and you're trying to attract talent, and they're afraid to go out after hours at work. And they're saying, like, can we figure this out, like as we would approach perhaps a technology problem? Perhaps the city is technology. So they are going to kind of build this town now. I think they got approval, and they're going to focus on the constituents that they care about, which is, I guess, tech workers, and then all obviously tech workers need support systems. So, you need teachers and firemen and police officers. But it's a bold thought of like, can you build a new city? But it's also just something that's been happening for thousands of years. Like,
Yeah, it's
why do
all
we
along, right?
we couldn't build new cities? There's so much land in North America, especially in Canada. And if you can build a place that's going to attract other people, there's also a very high dollar value associated with a livable city. Like, it's crazy that it is the most expensive purchase to live in a place where you can walk to your grocery store. Like, why is that a luxury good? Why is that?
Yeah.
That's crazy. So I'm a big fan of like thinking from the ground up, if only because you might as well try.
Love it.
Yeah. Kids being able to walk to school, man. The thing I fear for my kid in the city is being constant and most dire worry.
Let's not talk about it, man. You're gonna get me all down on this too.
Okay. Build something new. The best way to critique something is build something new. These guys are building a new city. What else do we have popped up?
Okay, so next one. This is boring. This is super boring. And I think it's very indicative of the type of thing we're going to be seeing a lot more of, and how, essentially, like, this is very much connected to hustle culture and, the kind of like gig economy stuff. So somebody made this automation. This is Nikki, I guess. And this comes from, I don't know. If we'll call out the name in a minute, the link will be in the description. But essentially, let me just read through this step-by-step guide because I think it's really interesting. Let's go to the top. So the whole point of this thing is, how do you get a ton of deals on Upwork without having to spend like 20 hours, like half of your time on Upwork, right? So let's say you're an Upworker, you're part of the gig economy, you're looking to find jobs that way, right? So you set up an Upwork account, a Make.com account, and an Airtable, and you have your GPT-4, your OpenAI key, right? So you grab an RSS feed from Upwork of all the new jobs, set it to refresh every 90 minutes. So now you're getting every job coming from Upwork. Then you create an Airtable and you throw all of the content or like sort of build the schema for it. Job title, description, budget, etc. Get Make.com to take that stuff, chop it all up, and then I think put it into your Airtable. right? Then you get GPT-4 to go in and read the Airtable essentially and say, hey, is this something I would be interested in? Is this a good fit for me? And you say, you're an intelligent administrator. So now remember, this is where the AI comes in. Everything before this is not especially new technology, right? But this is where the AI comes in. And it can look at a job and based on criteria that you've given it, is this a good job for you or not, right? And then say true or false, or you could give it a score 0 to 100, right? There's different ways of, sort of managing that. And then scroll down a little bit. So the next part would be creating an application, to that job or that contract and saying, okay, if it's relevant, take the data that's there and create an application for it, submit that application, and then now you're reading every job on Upwork and applying to every one that feels like it's applicable to you without having to do anything. Once you've made this essentially integration and agent to do the work for you. So I just think that's awesome, man. I think that's really cool as far as a dead, boring set of operations that just would not have been available to people, a couple years ago. You know what I mean?
Totally. I think it's also like cool to think about this thing as like a recipe, which is, it's reminiscent of like if this then that, or like shortcuts on Apple, or like Zapier. But I do wonder, will we be telling AI recipes? Like you could imagine like at some point describing this, and like I just put it in and the AI does it. Can we imagine the future of working with AI being more like sharing a recipe than like programming something with like strong logic? I don't know.
And well, this feels like the logic's not that strong. And it does feel more recipe like, right? Where it's but could it be more you just sit with an AI over your shoulder or over its shoulder and say, hey, could you go here, read all this stuff, look for stuff that looks like this, and then make an application for it? That's what you would do for a person, right? Like you're training an intern to do this.
Yeah,
So when does it get to that level where it feels that natural in terms of, I'm just going to do 2 or 3 of these. I'm going to look at them and I'm going to tell you what's relevant, what's not, or we have this scorecard and check it against this scorecard. To me, it's super boring work that just enables people finding the right opportunities. And honestly, this whole thing should be part of a function for Upwork. Like, why isn't Upwork just offering this for people, right?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, they probably have competing incentives. I don't know about this specifically, but often you don't want people to automate the usage of your service. You can imagine like spammers on like marketplace or like taking advantage of this. So
Right.
it's this arms race of like, enabling the user versus like protecting the community.
Mm.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Recipes. Future.
There it is.
All right. So the next thing I wanted to share, just in like our little snacks of updates, is Too Advanced Studios returns in 2024. Do you remember Too Advanced?
Do I remember Too Advanced? For those not in the know, Too Advanced Studios was the poster child of fancy Flash graphics. Flash, people probably don't even know what Flash is, but Flash was kind of like a browser plugin that allowed for crazy animations and stuff. And they just did these over the top, rich, graphically intense animated websites that were so unnecessary in every way, but were really interesting, pioneering web experiences, right? Like they were dope, man. Too Advanced was, you looked at Too Advanced as like gods, right?
Yeah, it was super cool. They had, oh yeah, there we go. We got like the different takes of it, but I do remember seeing these websites and it just blowing my mind what one could do on the web. And then when looking into it, like how complicated that would be. I think we've come like in a little bit of like we departed and we came back to this kind of really immersive website thing. I don't think we're there yet, but it used to be that you would go to a website, and if it was a good website, it would be like a compelling, almost like a video game.
Yep.
And now we're like, there was Web 2.0, everything's super fast, responsive. We've got the mobile phone thing going on. And I think we're now at the cusp of like some carve out of the internet will become much more immersive and interesting, where it makes sense. Obviously, Amazon won't be, but yeah, if you have a studio website or you're looking at a product like a house, even on that website, you saw like a lot more immersion and like moving around these different houses. So I think it does like kind of denote some uh, new possibilities that to advance is getting back in the game. To quote the tweet, "We are so back." I think
That's usually a bad sign. When you see we're so back, that's the beginning of people thinking things are fine when they're not.
yeah.
But yeah, okay. I'm excited about this. And to your point, I think the where we've seen this come back is like product pages and landing pages of well-funded products essentially. And I think they shoved a lot of that energy from the website into product videos because like bandwidth just went up so much. And so product videos kind of like went on that similar kind of arms race of like, we're just going to make a better product video. We're going to make a better product video. We're going to hire Sandwich Video to make our video. And then we're going to hire these guys. And there was this whole like product video race where everyone had to make the best product video. And it was like a subculture for like, I don't know, it was like 2014 to 2017 or something like that, 2019. It was all about the product video. How good is your product video?
Yeah.
And then it started to like move more towards super advanced landing pages. And I think Apple is one of the best examples of a company who does this in a way that speaks really honestly to the product and just is incredible in terms of its quality, like how well they work. Like pick any product, right? And as you scroll down, like the things that are animating, there's like zoom ins to things, there's like clips of video that are playing. There's a lot going on a lot of their landing pages, which I'm always impressed by. And usually the newer the product and the less details there is to talk about it, the fancier the web page. The more they sort of rely on that the glitz and that sizzle when there's a little bit less stake almost.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely set the standard, and notably, I think if you didn't know, you would think, "Oh, Apple's doing all this stuff," but they're hiring like the best brand design dev shops to build this stuff. So it's not necessarily all them, and they're integrating the latest technology. So they're like, yeah, they're on it. And so maybe that's like another signal is that maybe we're moving from sort of in-house to more studios. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's happening, but I think that the technology's there to deliver some really compelling web experiences, and I'm excited to see. Yeah. Okay. So we got some bad news for AI.
Yeah.
There's been a couple things. So the first one I will say is Rabbit, our friend, the R1, beautiful teenage engineering design, crappy off-the-shelf backend that was recently released to GitHub. I would show the link if I could, but it was basically the Rabbit source code, and it showed that they're just like literally saving passwords into like a non-encrypted database.
Oh,
just,
dang.
yeah, jiggering
Rabbit.
stuff
No,
together.
guys, no.
Running some off-the-shelf like node server. I don't know. It was like it sounded pretty bad. I didn't look deeply into the source code, but it was taken down. I think it was probably like a angry engineer who released it. But definitely a front or a shell. Now let's talk about the next shell, which got like one of the worst reviews. This guy MKBHD.
Marcus Brownlee.
Yes, he's a big reviewer. He says it's the worst product I've ever reviewed.
I watched this review, and did you watch it?
I didn't watch it though.
Okay, so there's a bunch of stuff that he calls out in here. So let's just go through. Let's legitimately what the problems are, and then what there's a whole uproar around the fact that he essentially threw them under the bus, and like, you have this big platform and you shouldn't be, throw, like, this is new technology and this is a new company and they're trying to do something nice and something cool, and you're stifling that because it's not as good as an iPhone yet, right? Like, iPhone's had a billion generations. Okay, so a couple things he calls out. One is like the hardware quality, like the build quality is amazing. That's the best part. In terms of like what it can do, there's not a ton of stuff that it can actually do. When you ask it questions, there's a very, very, very long, awkward pause between the time that you say, what time is it in San Francisco right now? And it goes up to the cloud, and then the cloud has to think about it. And then there's this pause. And then just when you think it's not going to give you an answer and it's been too long and you start to move on to something else, it kind of comes back and reads it out loud, like the answer. And it's like, oh, that wasn't great, right? Like, it's just not fast enough. It's like using web pages way back in the day when they were just so slow, it sucked. And people were like, this is never going to catch on because it's too slow. So look, there's a speed problem here. It's legit. It's real. The interface thing with this little projection thing is like, yeah, it's weird. It's new. Is it a great interface or not? Like he said, it actually works half decently. It is not bright, but you can use it. And the way that your hand, sort of interacts with it is pretty intuitive. He said it actually works way better than you would think in terms of it being intuitive. The hardware itself is super hot. So there's this problem with wireless induction charging, right? Where when you put a phone on, like, if you have like a wireless charger at home and you put your phone on that, it's always way hotter than if you, put your phone on like just a plug-in charger at the bottom. The further that distance becomes between the two charging plates, so whatever's on the external of one charging coil and then the back of the phone, that's some distance, right? Like you've got like a quarter of a millimeter. As you get this little battery charger behind, like you pin it in between your shirt and the outside, and it's the thicker your clothes are, essentially the more distance you create, the further the power needs to travel, the hotter it gets. Yeah. And this thing is heavy. So you only want to wear it on thick stuff because otherwise it's like pulling your shirt down, right? Because it's like heavy. So you can't, like, I couldn't wear it on this t-shirt. It wouldn't work, right? So that's a problem. The photos it takes are like not great. It's right in the way when you put in a seatbelt when you're on the car. The light that shows you that there's something there, you would never see, like with the way that you have to like look down and see it, it doesn't really work. And the battery life is terrible. Like, it's just because it seems to be like running all the time. Maybe there's a software update for that. Maybe it's just a hardware problem. We don't really know yet. So he really tore it up. Like, those are, and like, that's probably like 4 out of the 9 things that he found that are fundamentally wrong with the product. Even though he called out, like, it's awesome that we have this. It was built really well. But it's just phone every time you're using it. And that's a bad sign.
Yeah, I mean, so I will go back to when we heard that it was released, and we had an episode, and my thought was, this is a beautiful execution. They executed this beautifully, but it is the wrong product. And it just, people won't want to use this because of all the issues that it will have, and it will always be compared to a phone. I'm gonna have to amend my case. It's not well executed either. Like the fact that it's really hot.
I remember that episode. I remember we said they did the best execution possible of this product, and I'm not sure that that's true at this point. And maybe with today's technology, that's true. But there's definitely some fundamental issues with this thing that come out.
Yeah, of all their money, though, they spent it on execution. Like, there is no doubt to me that this thing costs so much money and design time to make. So they probably spent a lot of time on execution. The challenge is, if you do execution and the time is not right, you will plummet. And we saw that with General Magic, where they basically invented the iPhone before the iPhone, and it was just like 10 years too early. We saw that with Magic Leap, and there's a magic piece to this, and we just saw that with the Humane Pin and Rabbit. I think these things have been rushed out. They have not been tested. They are very expensive, and they don't bring hackers along. The things that
Mm.
work, in my mind, start with hackers who are willing to put up with rough edges and, in fact, willing to fix the problems. And that stuff just kind of gets exponentially better. So for me, this AI device thing is really going to be a story about homebrew versus the big co. Who's going to execute well? Who's going to keep it going? Who's going to add like really specific value from the beginning? And what is the form factor going to be for talking with this AI? It's TBD, but clearly they failed.
It's
Uh,
it's a little rugged, and I was bummed for this, man, because it felt like it was on the right track. Like there was something about it that was a novelty. Do you think we just got caught up in the novelty of it all?
no, I think that there's something to be said for a communicator. I think every piece of science fiction is an extension of our existing designs. Science fiction extends the boundaries of design. And I think that the form factor makes sense, but it makes sense as a peripheral. And it doesn't make sense. And it probably makes sense like with the earbud connection, AirPod connection or whatever.
Yep.
Um, but they pushed at the boundaries. I just think that they like overspent time because as a startup you can't do R&D. You're not Apple. Like these people are all ex-Apple. They're used to like billions of dollars of budget to like take 6 years to develop an idea. Startup, you have a burn rate, and you got to like execute and share early, get customer feedback. They didn't have any of that, and I've heard it said that maybe what this is they kind of knew it was going to fail, but they wanted to display all of the IP and the patents that they had developed for an acquisition. So the next thing to watch here is that like,
Mm,
do they get acquired? Because it would cost a big co more to get to this place with the device.
sure.
So perhaps this is valuable for somebody to acquire and find.
There's something so foreign to me about this startup strategy of get tons of money and build something really big in a stealth you know uh, environment almost, and start with a big product. And I think I don't know how often it works. I don't know how often, like, if we were to build a list out of the companies who chose that strategy, how many of them won. It feels like not many. At the same time, it's like it's kind of compelling. Like it feels cool to think about this team like working with nobody around, and
Yeah,
it's late, and it's a closed lab and nobody can see what they're doing, and every day they leave the office and they're like, this is cool, nobody's done anything like this before, and we're going to be the ones who share this with the world. And that's the exact thing that I see helps companies die rather than succeed, because you start to drink your own Kool-Aid and you forget. You just don't have feedback, right? Like the feedback loops become so long that you can't iterate on the product to actually make it better. Yes, you
yeah,
can work towards a vision, but is that vision a hallucination? That's
yeah,
the danger in this strategy.
totally. And you imagine that your biggest problem is that somebody's going to copy the idea when the biggest problem is that no one cares. That's the
Yeah,
biggest problem.
when startups die, it's rarely murder; it's often suicide, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
So I
You speak.
shared, while we're on this topic
Yeah.
of AI devices, limitless AI. So we talked about this a little while ago, and it was originally called Rewind.ai, and they had a little like lanyard or something like that. I feel like this is the same guys, but I could be wrong. So like, look, sorry, Limitless and Rewind if I'm confusing you guys. But this is really fun. I like this. I'm excited about what these guys are doing from its simplicity. So it's called the world's most wearable AI, and they made a little video about it. They're like, it's going to be $699, which is like the price of the rabbit or something. And they're like, no, that sounds wrong. It's going to be $99. So first price point, $100. Anyone can spend $100 on something and have it not work, and it's not going to kill them. Humane Pin is like 1,200 or something. Like or 700. It's a lot. What this one is essentially a little listening device that you put on, and it just listens to you, and you can tell it to like record anything. It will ambiently record anything. You can give it instructions. It'll save those instructions for later. There's no feedback on it right away. It's essentially just there listening all the time in a context of notes and memories. What's cool about it is they're actually just starting with a computer app version of it. So
Mm-hmm.
all it needs to do is your meetings on Zoom, be in your Slack, wherever, and then it's sort of ingesting all of this information the same way you are, but just has a limitless memory as opposed to yourself, where you actually can't remember everything. And then it's got a few things where it gives you prep for a meeting, gives you a transcript of the meeting, gives you notes, from a meeting. So they're really looking at the meeting use cases as their wedge of how to get in, which is pretty cool. And they've got a few reasons why they think it's better than existing tools on this. I think this is cool. I'm excited about this as a dumber, simpler product with a clearer, narrower use case. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is solving problems from day one, and it's cheap, and it's triable. So I think the challenge they're going to have is there's so many different people doing this that they're going to have to figure out where they're going to make money. But I think it's right to make money in the place where you like put all of your notes, right? Like if you can
Yep.
make it easier for me, and I can go back there and I get used to it, and it's like around the same price as other people, then that makes sense. I do think, I do think again to our previous conversations, it's going to be a Cambrian explosion of hardware, and yeah, we'll see where it goes. But I think this is way more likely to succeed than, well, obviously than AI Pin or the Rabbit, just because it's like so specific. You can imagine, and the other thing is the customer. Like you can imagine a uh, a uh, a business buys this for their staff, right?
Right.
Versus like
Yeah.
one consumer, like buying, like imagine a whole team had this. It would be a lot better.
Oh man, yeah, that's deadly. So think about it from, with whenever you go from like an individual tool to a group tool, there's always some sort of like manager dashboard. And now you've just got surveillance for everyone and you know what every employee is saying, at all points in times. And then, how does that level up or like sort of bubble up to some sort of a manager dashboard? Um, Doing all the sentiment analysis on that. Who's a bad apple? Who's good? Like, oh my God, that's dystopian. As soon as you start to level this stuff up beyond the individual and it helping them up, potential for dystopian usage comes in pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's why we've got to watch it. Which, speaking of which, I'll just go back to this thing that we shared before, which is kind of like when I say competitor to these guys. This is what I'm kind of talking about. So this is the
Mm-hmm.
O1. I did a pre-order, so like there's a guy who's going to ship it to me. There's like Canadian issues going on.
Oh, like you have to use a proxy in the States or something.
No, he's just like doing one, so we just pay the fees once, and he's gonna send it to me, and you can like buy it pre-soldered or like solder it yourself. I'm gonna solder it myself. But yeah, this is pretty much exact same thing, except the difference is that it's all open source, so you can go
Mm.
to the project on GitHub. This is kind of like the GitHub IO page, and you can go through and you install it yourself. They have their source on their GitHub repo. And so, yeah, that's like another thing is like you have this super cheap player like Limitless. You have this open source hacker version, which is like the Linux of it all. Um, and then like I'm sure there's room for like a high end AI pin. Not bad.
Mm.
All right, we're on to some more stuff around visual stuff. We've been talking a lot about LLM. We've been talking about like web houses. One of the developments that I saw this week was this kind of paper, 6 image 2 3D. So this is notable in cars where you have like 6 cameras facing out.
Mm.
Uh, a big challenge there is like how do you using just image input? reconstruct the road, and know where to go. Like, how do you do the computer vision that a human would do? So these guys are just like
And
showing.
it has to happen fast too, right? Like this is the thing is that that's not as hard a problem if you can use the data at a later date to generate a 3D space, but to do it essentially live is a different story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And I think another piece is like, the Waymo cars and cruise cars, they have like LiDAR and they have like a lot more sensors. Tesla has pivoted to like, early on, Musk said that all they needed was pixels. And so this is kind of proving that to be true, which is, mappings. And this is just purely based on images, real time, uh, understanding like all the differences of objects and kind of like distances, depth, all inferred from just six images or six cameras.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's just now. That's just now, and like imagine 3 to 5 years from now, it'll be fully reconstructing environments that you're walking around. Pretty amazing. So we have the automobile case, but you can imagine like memory recreation. You can imagine this being at your birthday party,
Yeah.
um, and reconstructing that whole event and experiencing it again.
God damn, this is gonna be so weird, man. This is gonna be so weird. Like, sorry, it'll feel natural then. It'll feel weird for a while, and then it'll feel natural. But
Yeah.
for us looking into that future that does not yet exist, yeah, weird.
Yeah. I remember the first time I was in a Tesla and I saw like the little car, and then you see like all the stuff around there, like
Yes.
almost like you have like a drone above the car and being like, what is going on? How's this happening? Yeah, and now it's just commonplace. So that'll be what it's like. We can just kind of like look at, it's the third person. It's the out of body experience. Like, what's that going to do? I don't know. It's going to feel weird.
It is going to feel weird. And man, I can't wait until we can kind of like plug into that experience and replace your own vision with this kind of computer vision, like that's going to be so weird. Like
It's going to be so crazy.
being able to see in 360, like that'll be a thing. Like you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to see in just they've got all these like heat maps and stuff in here, right? Like it's going to be so weird. Okay, so yeah, let's keep going. This is great.
Yeah,
Though.
but I think like you could like I play Assassin's Creed. It's like third person view. You could imagine you walk down the street, you see yourself in third person view, and then like there's like the eagle view or like the bird's eye, and like go up there. Yeah, it'll be nuts.
First third person view game, was it Tomb Raider? Zelda?
Well, from above, I don't know. Yeah, Resident Evil was back then too.
Was it Zelda though? Was that way?
Zelda was definitely a third person game. I mean, I think what was the first one?
Tomb Raider made it pretty popular or something.
Yeah, as a 3D background, definitely.
Yeah, there was no third person view in Quake.
So video games inform the future. Watch for the video game patterns. We will apply them to our lives. Speaking of which, this is called VASA 1. Microsoft released it, but we were talking about avatars before, and like we were like, well, what is the process, that you're gonna have to do? Like with that guy walking down the street, like how many takes did he have to do? How much did he have to talk?
Mm-hmm.
This is VASA, which takes one image.
Have you ever had, maybe you're in that place right now where you want to turn your life around and somewhere deep in your soul, there could be some decisions that you have to make. Like,
It's generated from literally one image. I don't know if you can see it below here.
No way. That is outrageous.
Inferring like her facial movements, voice, all that stuff is fake. All they did was put an image in there.
Wow. So where did that script come from? Maybe this is a stupid question, but like they just put words in.
A lot of questions. So
I don't know where the script came from. We should.
So it's not the voice of that person though, and this is so crazy. So it's matching. We're assuming that there's a voice track, or is the voice track changed?
I'm like, what?
That's crazy.
User journey more pleasant. They'll contribute to better business metrics as well.
Yeah, it's kind of wonky. You can see like the artifacts, but again, I think we
It's
can talk.
barely wonky. Come on, this is pretty good. Like as far as the stuff goes. Like, oh my god, that's
Yeah,
you could imagine being on a video call with this person. Well, so I'm sorry, I don't know if it's live or not, but it will be sooner or later. Let's just
real time
assume.
efficiency. They say 512 by 512, which is at 45 frames per second, which is a video call. You could. Yeah.
So that's basically a video call. So I could be on a video call with this generated FaceTime person, and if I wasn't really paying attention, like I'd be fooled for a while, right? Like that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you can imagine for media too, like it's just going to be, well, I mean, games like
Yep.
the generated faces and now they can talk.
大哥今天请我来，可不能
Like, how cool is that style though? Like, I don't know. For creativity, it'll be really interesting. Huge question marks in terms of like a video call. Are you talking to the person you think you are?
This is dope. I love it. It's going to be so good. And like, look, we saw this coming, talking about it, how this is, trending towards more and more realistic. What I love about this one is how strong it is in terms of like capturing the like micro expressions of facial emotion, which is the hardest part to animate essentially, right?
Yeah, even blinks and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, the theme we were talking about before is like resolution is not reliability. Resolution is not authentication. Resolution is not verification. It used to be. It used to be if you saw a photo, saw a video, you could trust it. Now you just can't. Just don't. You look for another authentication method.
You can't anymore. It's not going to work. All right.
Okay. So next up, we got 3 meta links. So I think the first one we can talk about, which is Meta AI. You can type in here, I have a podcast about technology. How should I let people know about it? Oh.
Wait. Ask it to give us comments.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. They really want me to log in. Oops. Clear chat. Okay. So, what do you think about Meta AI as compared?
Okay. Let's see what it says.
Key strengths: conversational AI, multitasking, knowledge base, user-friendly, competitor comparison. Bard, a solid competitor. Bard is also conversational AI. Microsoft Bing, another conversational AI. Strong focus on search. OpenAI and ChatGPT, a powerful language model. It excels at generating text and answering complex questions. However, our conversational styles and approach differ. In summary, each has its strengths.
Okay. So, well, that's probably true. Like, let's be fair. Like, that's probably not, completely wrong. So it's focusing on multitasking and user friendliness. What does that mean? Does that mean it's more of just like, what does that mean?
What does multitasking mean? Handle multiple requests, perform them simultaneously, but don't others do that too?
Like, you got to ask it, what does multitasking for you mean, or how to? Because it's just giving you definitions of multitasking now.
Yeah. Use conversational flow, contextual understanding. Yeah. But how are you? Training data, conversational style, multitasking. I can handle multiple requests and topics simultaneously, making me a great tool. ChatGPT is also capable, but its strengths lie in generating in-depth text and answering complex queries.
I should still of like, why would I?
Quickly answer multiple questions. Research multiple topics. Yeah, but you can do all that with ChatGPT.
And also, like, humans are bad at this type of multitasking. Like, it's usually making us perform worse, trying to do 2 things at once.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think it's so interesting though. Like, what's powering this is Meta Llama 3, which was also released. This is free. So like right now, I'm paying $20 a month for ChatGPT.
Right.
and now I'm getting like comparable level results for free on all my apps. So I do think that. So maybe we'll pull this up, which is the Stratechery article on just Meta and Open, because the other announcement that happened this week was Meta Horizon OS, which is basically open sourcing the the kind of build of Android, I guess, that Meta has on their headsets. And so this is open source OS for
Mm-hmm.
headsets and an open source or open model for LLMs. And the argument here is like there's a reason strategically to focus on open for Meta, even though the quality may not be at ChatGPT levels. The belief here is that if you open it up, people improve it. It builds an ecosystem. And I think what he talks about is kind of like how it commoditizes certain aspects of search, and it opens up the ability for others to play on this walled garden that currently is kind of like Google Android and Apple iOS. Those are like the two dominant platforms. And by focusing on open, it just makes it gives an alternative to those things, which is beneficial for Meta, the OS. What do you think?
The market didn't react well to this. Essentially, this what was it? Announcement from Zuck, right? Like people looked at this and were like, "Oh man, it's going to take a minute for AI to make money. Oh, there's other people are going to have to come in and work with you on it. You mean, you're not going to be like Nvidia and just start printing, more and more cash right away?" But look, like at first I was like, okay, well maybe there's something wrong here, and then I remembered that the news is usually just a catalyst for creating or helping to figure out, well, what was the problem in the technical charts already, right? So Meta was overextended. If we look at it from 2022, it had a 485% growth from 2022 top to bottom, right? Like that's November 2022. That's less than 2 years ago for a stock to run almost 5x. So then I was thinking, you know what, maybe it was overextended and people were way too excited, and this loss is basically just a gain that shouldn't have been in there in the first place. People were just piling in because of AI hype, and this is a natural pullback. And Zuck is right, this stuff takes time, and I like the idea that they're actually trying to bring in more people to this, and they're trying to be a little characteristic of Facebook or Meta.
Yeah, it depends on what you look at, but for me in my daily work, React is a Facebook project,
Right.
which is a huge one, and then like a lot of the AI stuff. I think PyTorch is from Facebook, which has enabled a bunch of AI, and they've been investing in open stuff around XR for a long time, WebXR and all the like. But I think each big company is going to have a different ecosystem they're building. Apple's obviously building their own. But Google also supports like TensorFlow, and obviously they have Android. So there is an open source and then competitive piece to a lot of the software that we see out there. I think that with AI, there is a huge bet on just the amount of GPUs that folks are buying, and the investment that's going into both the XR metaverse piece and the AI assistant piece. So there's like a huge capex I think that they're doing, but I don't really know the finances of it. This is not financial advice, but definitely worth reading to make your own decision.
I'm gonna have to read this whole one to be a little more informed. But out of the gate, again, I just like that there's something that's more accessible. OpenAI, the joke of it being kind of closed AI, that they're really doing their own thing, even though they're supposed to be doing everyone's thing in most cases. Who was it? Actually, there was a new collaboration announced, I think, this week, Apple and was exploring using OpenAI. And so apparently they're in talks now, which I think is interesting.
Yes, I mean, Apple's going to have that big announcement. The only news is like, there's going to be a big announcement. Okay, thanks. Super informative.
Did you know that they killed their entire, like, theoretically, nobody really knows for sure, but the news is they killed their self-driving car project almost completely and took all of the resources that were going towards that and threw it at AI?
Yes, totally, because those are very similar things, making cars and building AI models.
I think it was like, we're just not going to spend money on this anymore, and we're going to spend money over here, knowing that we put our chips on the wrong table.
Yeah. I mean, if there's an industry to get into to lose a bunch of money in CapEx and take a huge risk, it's automotive. Again, I guess back to the regulated piece, like there's a reason that it's highly regulated, but it's a highly regulated industry.
Right.
It requires setting up huge plants. Not that Apple couldn't do that, but the margins that they make on phones and software is just never going to compare to what you could make on an automobile, especially now that Chinese manufacturers, I don't know if you've seen these Chinese cars, but they're cool. They're the future. And like, they're going to kind of eat Tesla's lunch, I think, if things keep going the way they are.
There's lots of news about Cybertruck now that they're making their way into the wild as well. Maybe we cover that next time. Want to talk about this last Mark Zuckerberg link?
This is just it's a good video with like this engineering guy who asks good engineering questions. This dude, I don't know if I can get him on this.
Dwarkesh Patel?
Yes. Do you know this guy?
Nope, but now people do. It's Dwarkesh Patel on YouTube. DWARKAES.
Yeah, so he asks like a lot about a lot of things, and I think one of the interesting bits he asks about is how did you know to buy this many NVIDIA CPUs? And Mark's answer is like, well, we didn't know exactly what we needed it for. Like we needed it for reals, but we knew we would need more capacity. And it's just very interesting to watch all the kind of like big bets that Meta has made or other tech companies, and people at the time being like, that's crazy. Why did you acquire WhatsApp for that much? $1 billion for Instagram. Why did you buy that many GPUs? And then just seeing being like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
How did they know? Just the wibble wobble of like the public sentiment and like the tech reporters and stuff is like, and what I like about this interview is it's much more technical, which to me is much more real. Like when you're talking about what it takes to build these models, what the benefits are, what you can do with the outputs, what the training data is. It's just much more real than being like, oh, they're overvalued, they're undervalued, like, and this kind of like more financial speculation conversation. So this is a good deep dive into the meta stuff.
I love it. And on that take of, okay, if you're a great manager, like the higher up the totem pole you go, essentially your time horizon goes further out, right? Like you need to be thinking further ahead. And it's cool to see, Zuckerberg's really long-term thinking here, being essentially the top of this totem pole is like, I have to think about these things that are happening, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and making bets based on, okay, we're going to buy all these GPUs. When did they buy them? I don't remember what year it was. Or when they bought Instagram, how long did that take to really play out and integrate into the ecosystem and pay dividends for them? I think it started to happen pretty quick, but then it compounded even more, after that. So they got a win from day one, and then it just compounded, and that was the bet. And you make a few of those asymmetric bets and you make them right. That's the job as a leader, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So I think as a last link, I will link up this, which is join our Discord. It'll be in the links. I'm going to share out these Arc links, Arc browser, plug there. Join the community. We're going to have some events in Toronto, or an event, and we might try something with getting a couple more people. So this has been a great episode.